It's time for a new formation guide. This is my favorite formation of the new patch so far. It's both great fun to play and very effective. Here comes Pepper. Welcome everybody! As usual, I will explain everything in great detail, all players, their playstyles, what their tasks are, defensive patterns, offensive patterns, instructions, sub-tactics, and as always, everything accompanied by relevant in-game footage. We're going for a 4-2-3-1 quick counter. Using long ball counter is fine as well, but it would be different than today I'll be showing quick counter. Let's look at the defensive patterns of this formation. When in a backwards movement, we have 9 players to help out defensively. As interceptions are less reliable now, having more people to tighten up relevant spaces is great. We have a back line of 4 and in front of them another line of 5. This way, you can for example patiently defend with your defender while pressuring the opponent with a chasing back midfielder. Here you can see it again. 4 at the back with 1 defender on the outside because he's man marking and 5 players in the midfield. See how especially the 3 inner midfielders tighten up the space in the midfield? As most people play through the middle, this makes it harder for them to find good opportunities. You will easily outnumber most opponents this way, giving you an advantage. If you manually pull somebody out of the back 4, like I did here with DRIBBLE to contest the header, one of the midfielders, most likely the defensive one, will cover up the space the defender left open. One important thing not only for this formation but in general is to know when to hover backwards and when to engage. Since Rijkaard is pressuring my opponent and Cannavaro is waiting up front, my opponent is forced into a reaction. So what I do is, very shortly before he takes the next touch, I engage with Cannavaro because as he touches the ball again, he's stuck in the sprinting animation and I can get the ball. Here, it's pretty clear that my opponent will attempt a through ball through 2 of my players. So instead of hovering backwards, I join the second press player and go for the ball. Since the new patch, through balls are super important. So it's even more important for you to hover backwards to not ever let an opponent's player reach behind your defenders. For this, I move Rijkaard back in anticipation of the through ball so he cannot be outrun. And as soon as the opportunity arises, I move him in a position where he can intercept a possible pass, but also just take the ball from the opponent. Another important thing to know and do is using your defensive midfielder to chase back rather than using the defenders to chase forward. This will keep your backline functional, making it a lot harder for your opponent to find a good opening there. Let's move to the offensive patterns. Something that I find really useful are chipped balls to one of the side midfielders if they are unmarked. As you can see here, the opponent's player is too far away to contest, so it's basically a free header. On top of that, since the opponent's player still does the contesting animation, he will land after your player, giving your player a head start. If you want to avoid this in your defense, by the way, you have to super cancel and move your defender away manually. In general, this formation is very versatile offensively. Through balls to your striker will often enable him to go 1 versus 1 against the keeper. I'll get into more detail about the players later, but having a fast goal poacher is super nice here. This is especially powerful directly after winning a ball. With quick counter, you're more likely to win the ball even far up, so make sure to be aware of whether any of your attackers make a run for a nice through ball. It doesn't necessarily have to be the striker to do this. The attacking midfielder is likely to do this as well when the space up front is empty. Playing a more regular style that most people do with an emphasis on 1-2s is also easily possible with this formation. You can also use your side midfielders to create space and openings with 1-2s. Now the next aspect is quite important in terms of playstyle choice for your central midfielder. I will get to all the players, all playstyles and such in a second, but in midfield I play either a destroyer or an anchorman next to an orchestrator, and that's important. I'm not sure if this accounts for all playstyles and formations, so take it with a grain of salt. I didn't excessively test this everywhere. In general, in this game usually, attacking works in a way that the game consists of 5 dynamic attacking lanes, each of which can be assigned to a player. You can see this here. There are 2 outer lanes occupied by my side midfielders. The 2 half lanes are occupied by my attacking midfielder and my orchestrator. The middle lane is taken by my striker. The orchestrator will only move up if one of the 3 inner lanes are unoccupied. Here you can see that Gullit is a bit back, so the left half lane is unoccupied, meaning the orchestrator will make a run. In this situation, FINESSE covers the left half lane, Shevchenko the middle lane, so the outer left lane is free, and this is where orchestrator Pirlo is. Now see what he does. He does not move on. Now compare this to box Kanté. He actually does move up. But here's the thing, I do not want that. 3 reasons. 1, Vieira is now all alone in the middle. Not good if the opponent does a quick counter. Reason 2, from here, Kanté has the longest way back into his position before he can be relevant again. Reason 3, Kanté doesn't really help me much here, especially with my playstyle and his player profile. I could pass to him, but then what? So yeah, that's why I prefer the orchestrator over the box in this formation. If you want to use a box or any other style at all cost but avoid them moving towards the wings, you could try an anchoring instruction. Here, Shevchenko moves from the middle lane to the half lane, and Gullit takes his place in the middle lane. This means that the orchestrator Pirlo will not move up because all 3 middle lanes are taken. And that's a good thing because it gives my attack some depth I can use, especially as Pirlo is such a good passer. Just to complete this, here you can also see that if the middle lane is unoccupied, the orchestrator isn't shy of taking that one. Another offensive pattern is making use of the attacking midfielder when he roams outwards. Many times you can just move a little to the middle and then do a chipped through ball or a short cross to your striker. These close range passes or crosses are often giving your striker an easy header. If you like to play it a bit more slowly, you can do this with this formation. Nothing wrong with slowing down the game, perhaps initiating a side switch and then speeding it up again when necessary. You can also hold onto the ball until another player is in a good spot to finish. There's nothing wrong with passing back and observing a bit before speeding up again to create a chance. The last pattern is utilizing your side midfielders. They are the most important and powerful players in this formation. Getting them into a good position often translates into very good chances. Let's move towards the players. Pick your best goalkeeper. Having the low punt ability is beneficial. For defenders, the play styles aren't really too relevant. As you can see, except for Rijkaard, everybody has an inactive playstyle. If you use a fullback that is not a defensive fullback, give him a defensive instruction. About the order of the defenders. Usually, you want the defenders with the best leg coverage inside because that's the most crucial area. For me, this would mean switching Zakaria and Thuram. The reason why I don't is because Thuram is extremely fast, which is super important to avoid strikers outrunning him after through balls. For this formation, it is really crucial to have fast defenders because with quick counter they will fall back later, meaning they're more vulnerable to through balls into open space behind them. You can see it here in various situations. Being extremely fast can pretty much nullify an opponent's chance. It makes the difference between the opponent being able to touch and control the ball or your defender just running away with it and the attack being over. There is one exception when I use a defender that is not super fast, and that is when the opponent has an aerial threat. In this case, I use Van Buiten and man mark the aerial threat. Van Buiten's player ID is one of the best in the game thanks to his leg coverage, and even with a few points in aerial, especially now after the update, I feel like he can take on most aerial threats while also being great on the ground. This version of Van Buiten isn't even that slow anyway. Something you can sometimes do with your outer defenders is carry the ball a bit forward if you have the space and see if you get an opening, like here. You have to be careful not to lose the ball too quickly though, because your defender will be missing at the back. There's one more thing to know. If my opponent uses wing forwards, I man mark them with the fullback and the outer center back. Height marking usually also works. If my opponent uses 2 side midfielders, I use 2 fullbacks instead of 3 center backs to have more defensive width. As for free alternatives, I would go with these defenders. Wan-Bissaka has always been and still is great and really thrives due to his high speed. Free Koundé as well as Costa Curta are kind of obvious choices. For Costa Curta, make sure to go for a speed heavy build, you will need it here. Left back, also with a defensive instruction, is Theo Hernandez here. He's almost impossible to outrun. Downside is his defensive stats are a bit lackluster nowadays. Other alternatives would be Saliba, although I think he technically wasn't free, or Belletti if you chose him. Tony Adams can work, but you have to make sure he has decent speed and that you never let him go too far out of position. Let's move to the 2 midfielders in front of the backline. Here I use Destroyer Vieira with a defensive instruction. Using an anchorman here is fine. If you do it, you don't need the instruction. If you use a box-to-box player, you need it. Basically, this player is your main man for stopping enemy attacks. For this, he obviously needs to have great defensive stats and be decently fast. Great leg coverage makes a big difference, and being great physically is also a plus. On top of that, it's also very beneficial to have decent passing stats so that he is able to initiate good counterattacks after winning the ball. Good aerial performance is also nice to have, but in my opinion, definitely less important than the stats I mentioned before. The central midfielder is Orchestrator Pirlo. I would really go with an Orchestrator here. In the offensive patterns part in the beginning of the video, if you remember, I have already shown why I prefer this playstyle and would not use a box-to-box player here. If you like, you could though. Obviously, the Orchestrator needs good passing to be able to do great passes even over a long distance, like these wonderful long-range lofted through passes into empty space. I wouldn't say that finishing is super important, but it's nice to have, as the Orchestrator will sometimes be in a position to finish. If your Orchestrator can't finish, just try to pass the ball to someone else instead. Since he will also do defensive work, good defensive stats are needed. This will allow your player to win the ball from your opponent more often. Dribbling is also important to be able to control the ball quickly and handle it well. If your player is fast, very good. Pirlo isn't, which of course is a little disadvantage, but you can't have it all. As free-to-play alternatives, for the defensive midfielder, you could use Tchouaméni, although technically the best one wasn't actually free. Box-to-box Kanté would also be alright, Zakaria is also a great option. You could also go for Costa Curta if you don't need him in your defense, same for Belletti. Free Showtime Amrabat would also be decent. For the Orchestrator, solid free choices would for example be Ruben Neves or Jorginho if you picked him back then. Let's move on to the 3 players behind our sole striker, starting with the side midfielders. The 2 I have here are absolute anomalies and perfect for this formation. They are great dribblers, extremely fast, amazing finishers, and both blitz curlers. Hoeneß is also crazy good physically, whereas Messi is great at passing instead. Hoeneß is a whole player, and Messi's playstyle is inactive. Theoretically, if you for example have an attacking midfielder who cannot play side midfielder, you could also move him a bit inwards and use him as an attacking midfielder. It shouldn't change too much. Let's look in the game what they do. One thing they're really good at is providing width for your attacks, granting you some space on the outside to initiate an attack. If you have blitz curlers, they're a game changer. They allow you to score out of nowhere even with little space, and also force your opponent to permanently consider the blitz curler option even if you opt to go for the other direction. Even though they are side midfielders, they will roam in the middle if it benefits your attack. Here, as Shevchenko moved to the outside, Messi will gladly sprint through the middle for a great opening. Your side midfielders will also provide great through passes to your striker. You can also see that here, the side midfielder on the other side roamed really far into the middle now to be a great option, which I take advantage of. As I've mentioned earlier already, lofted passes to unmarked side midfielders are good ways to start off an attack because your opponent's player is often too far away to contest, allowing you an easy header or pass. As you've seen in the defensive patterns section, the side midfielders will chase back and help defend. This is quite good, especially since they are very fast, which results in two advantages for you. The first one is that your opponent's player has less time because fast players approach opponents faster. And the second advantage is that due to their great speed, the side midfielders are very unlikely to be outrun by the opponent's players, often allowing the side midfielders to get to passes first. As for free-to-play alternatives, Phil Foden and Vinicius Jr. are alright. Just like with the paid ones, try to make sure to have the stronger foot on the inside. Other possible options would for example be Chukwueze, Leao, Neto or Musiala. Obviously none of these cards can accurately replace the best epics, but it is what it is. Another option would be Bernardo Silva, but since he lacks speed, you'd have to play him a bit differently than the others. Next up is our attacking midfielder. Just like the side midfielders, I would go for either a whole player or an inactive playstyle here. I've also tried a creative playmaker and it was alright too. Gullit is absolutely perfect for this. He has everything. The attacking midfielder will often move into positions where he can finish, making it necessary for him to have great finishing stats. On top of that, it would be amazing if he also had high weak foot proficiency, because he will often move into space behind or next to either side of the striker. Being able to finish with both feet gives you a lot more freedom and greater unpredictability as in how you play out your attacks, as the opponent can't rely on which side you're more likely to move to. You see it in these clips. I scored just as many times with the right foot as with the weak foot. But the attacking midfielder isn't only a finisher. As I said before, he will often move into the space to the side of the striker, allowing him to receive the ball close to the opponent's box. What I like doing sometimes, especially if no other immediate option is available, is do a little lofted ball towards the striker. Especially if the striker is Mackay or Van Basten, it can often result in a goal. As you've seen in the defensive patterns, the attacking midfielder also moves back and helps defend. For this, it would be beneficial if your player also had a bit of defensive stats. Gullit is perfect for this, as he has great leg coverage and decent base defensive stats. As for free players, I think one of the best and luckily also pretty available players to replace Gullit in this position is Bellingham. He is also a solid all-rounder, great player ID, depending on which Bellingham you use, either good or even excellent finishing, and he also has very high weak foot accuracy. Physically, he is also better than most of the usual attacking midfielders. Last but absolutely not least, because he plays a key role in this formation, is the striker. In my case, goal poacher Shevchenko. I give him a counter target instruction to preserve his stamina. You could leave it away for a little more pressure in the opponent's third, but I don't think the benefit is that big. This player should be super fast so that he can start a run, and you pick the ideal moment for a pass so that Shevchenko uses his overspeed to get the 1v1 against the keeper. Especially if one of the defenders is out of position or the opponent just lost the ball far up. A through pass to a fast striker like Shevchenko is extremely powerful. The new through passing system of update 4.4 made this kind of passes way better than before. It's not limited to ground passes though. It works just as well with lofted through balls, but the timing is even more important. I've also tried slightly slower but more bulky strikers because not using Mackay is just inherently wrong. One advantage he showed is that in certain situations he can use his physicality to get to the ball after a contested lofted through ball. I've also tried a fox in the box, which worked pretty well too. As you can see, the fox also made some solid runs into space that I could use well with well-timed through balls. I think I do prefer the goal poacher though, but you can try either. What I also like doing is low punt kicks from my keeper to the striker and then head it to one of my midfielders. Since Shevchenko is not too bad in the air, he can do this. Makai or Van Basten can do it even better. Something else I like doing is use the striker to move a bit back and pressure the opponent. If you use counter target, you can use a little trick to make the space more narrow. Here I move Shevchenko to the right side and kinda park him there, and then switch to a different player to cover the other side. Gullit now moves along. Since Shevchenko has counter target, he will only walk and barely move back while the opponent has the ball. This makes the space more narrow, and if the opponent tries to play around Shevchenko's side again, I can just switch to him and pressure again. As a free alternative, Franz Mbappé is great because he's also very fast, a good finisher, and also quite good on the ball. If you don't have him, you could also use the free David Villa if you picked him. Now about the last part, sub-tactics. You could pick anything you like here. One simple option would be to keep the formation but use long ball counter instead. In the initial phase, after just having lost the ball, this will be a bit more stable defensively as your inner midfielders won't press towards the ball like in quick counter but stay back. The downside is you're less likely to get balls through early pressure this way. Another advantage of it would be against players who play really slowly and do safe passes most of the time. Against them, I prefer long ball counter because I'll have the entire team a bit further back then, which makes actual offensive passes harder for my opponent. The other option, which probably suits more people, is just using a more offensive formation. You could, for example, use a second forward instead of the AMF. Another option would be using wing forwards, but you'll be prone to man marking then. You can, however, use this to your advantage. If you move your wingers far out and put a central or an attacking midfielder between the wingers and your central forward, they will naturally have a lot of space because the outer defenders of your opponent are dragged out by your winger. So yeah, these were just suggestions. There are a lot of sub-tactics you can use. Just pick anything you're comfortable with. That's it, folks. I hope this formation guide helped you. Let me know if you liked this video. I'd love you to subscribe, like, or comment it. Until then, guys, take it easy. Shaka!